The fight over academics at the 40 Acres is one of the subjects of a new documentary premiering at South by Southwest this week. In 2011, then Governor Rick Perry urged the state's top public universities, including UT, to make academic reforms. UT President Bill Powers fought back against some of those proposals, and Powers says that he was then later forced into retirement later that year. Steve Mims directed a documentary about that show down there at UT and other public universities around the country called Starving the Beast, and he's joining us this morning with more on that. Good morning. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Greg.
So if you can explain, what really is the conflict at play here?
Well, there's a big reform movement that started around 2008, and it was implemented here by around 2011. And it caused a lot of controversy. We started following that at the time that things like the Board of Regents made news. Typically, that's not an exciting or newsworthy thing, but there was a lot of tumult about that. And
what were the reforms that were pushed for, and why the pushback against them?
Well, this is a nationwide thing. There's been a big movement nationally to reform higher ed because of, well, a lot of it is because of the expense. Student debt is in the news a lot. And so all the reforms were about a couple of things, about pushing technology and then about reforming the system to make it more affordable for people.
The title of the film, Starving the Beast, how did you arrive at that?
Well, that came from our research in terms of looking at how this problem evolved. And really, the film, we try to be as objective as possible to look at it over a 35-year period, because if you have to go back to about 1980, when funding for public higher education was at its peak. And in 35 years, it's really been a steady decline. And the shift of the cost has been, in many ways, pushed over onto the students and families. And the state universities have had a limit. And there's a lot of pressure not to raise tuition and to find other sources for money.
Did you find that as the state funding came down, that it seems, and this may just be anecdotal, that over the years, student loans have become more popular, and that kind of just filled in the gap?
Well, it had to. I think there's an expectation that people have, especially in the middle class, that your kids are going to go to college. So people, when that time comes, you find a way to do it, and you don't have time to do the research to find out why it happened. So a lot of people are struggling, and that has fostered a movement to fix it. And so there are different ideas. The movie's about those different ideas. Like the original concept for public higher education was that the state would invest in it as a social good. And that sort of changed now. So it's more of a libertarian idea that says that if your education has a market value, that it's up to you to shoulder more of that. And so there are legitimate arguments on both sides, and that's what we try to get to in the film.
Almost selling the service versus providing,
Well, it's a consumer point of view versus a citizen's point of view, or like maybe not versus, but a hybrid of those two. So if you see students as consumers, you think of them differently than if you see them as citizens.
Running short on time here, but I want to ask you, because you lecture at UT as well, have you seen a difference in the, I guess, quality of education or the way things happen on campuses?
No, I mean, to the credit of the university, and all we have great universities in the film. They've really worked hard to maintain and to become even better than they've ever been. And they've done that in the face of tremendous pressure. And that's why this controversy has erupted. It's like they're held to a very high standard, and they have to meet that because they're in competition with all these other universities, and they attract people from all over the world.
All right, we could go on much more about this, but we don't have the time. The film is entitled Starving the Beast. It premieres Sunday night at 7 at the Zach Scott Theater. Steve Mims, thank you very much, and best of luck with the film.